Good morning, this is your Stat Sensei, Mr. Spensei, and we're going to go through a couple bias scenarios. So, identify types of bias. So, interested in determining the percent of population who believed in God, a surveyor stood outside a church on Sunday morning and asked all the congregants a neutrally worded question about whether or not they believe in God. Well, the fact of the matter is they said neutrally worded, so that don't have to worry about the way the question was asked. And the question is, will this produce biased results? And most people will go, yeah. And I'll ask the question, well, why? Because they're outside of a church. And I'm like, well, what do you have against churches? And they're like, nothing against the church. But those who attend church tend to believe in God. So consequently, we overrepresent those who believe in God in this case and underrepresent those who do not. So this is a case of selection bias, selecting a really poor sample. Well, what does selection bias lead to? It leads to undercoverage bias. So we undercover those who do not believe in God because they're not likely to be at church. But there's also the possibility of response bias. And here's the positive. You're like, well, you said it was a neutrally worded question. And I'm like, good catch. You're right. So it wasn't because of the question. But if I'm there and everyone else is saying one thing, I might feel pressured to respond similarly. If everyone says they like a song, I'm probably going to say I like the song because I want to not stand out. So once again, peer pressure is a type of response bias. All right, this next problem was a 2008 question two, and it said a local school board plans to conduct a survey of parents' opinions about year-round schooling in elementary schools. The school board contacts 500 of the families by mail. The survey question is provided below. A proposal has been submitted that would require students in elementary schools to attend school on a year-round basis. Do you support the proposal, yes or no? I'm sitting there going, do you support the proposal? That's kind of neutrally worded. It's like, oh, this is the proposal submitted. Do you support it, yes or no? Neutrally worded. I'm good with that. So the school board received responses from 98 of the families. Whoa, 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 whoa! Wait a second. They contacted 500, and 98 responded. Well, that sounds like non-response bias. In fact, it says what type of bias is included? Non-response. But I have to give more information. I can't just say non-response because non-response, you could have guessed that. Back it up, provide information. Why? How? In this case, only 98 of the 500 families responded to the survey. If that's all you included, you said it was non-response and you had that information, that's a full credit. That is a full credit response. All right. It says 98 of the families responded, with 76 indicating support for year-round schools. In other words, they don't like their kids, they want their kids in school and want teachers to have stuff for them. So based on this outcome, the local school board concludes that most of the families with at least one child in elementary school prefer year-round schooling. The next thing says, could we just contact another 500 families and add this to the original results? They're saying, oh, because it's biased, can we contact another 500 and add it? And the answer is no. Increasing sample size does not fix bias. So even after increasing the sample size, the non-response bias will be there because there are still 402 of the 500 families that did not respond. Again, no, and the reason in context. All right. And I'd really like, you cannot fix bias data by increasing sample size. The next thing it says, name two ways to address the bias in the survey. Now the AP question only required one, but there are two basic ways. Well, the first way is my favorite, and I recorded it as the second, is throw it away, start off with and do it again. So my second one is the school board could take a completely new survey using phone calls or person-to-person contact to try to eliminate the amount of non-response bias. In other words, they had to start over, take a completely new survey. The other thing they could do is they could go and knock on the 402 doors and say, hey, I need you to respond. Because if they get the 402 to respond, they no longer have the non-response bias. Just remember, you cannot fix bias data by adding more data to it. In this case, they didn't fix it. They just said, hey, we're going to contact who didn't respond. If we call them up and they respond, we're good to go. We knock on their doors and they respond, we good to go. Um, if we send them other letters and they respond, we're good to go. But we cannot add additional people to the sample. All right. Sure hopes that helps. Look forward to seeing you on the next one, which will also be another free response on bias data. Thank you.